morning, everyone, for another Teams office hours here. I'm just going to put in the chat whether you can hear me. If you can just hit the thumbs up, let me know you can hear me. I'm always worried about my audio going through. So, but yeah, good morning, everyone. Another Teams office hours. Again, this is opportunity to put your questions and ask any questions for next half hour or less, and I'll be happy to talk about it. So do that at any time, and then as always, I try to have something to talk about. While we wait for questions. I don't have anything like amazing. Not that other sessions have been. I was just sitting here going through things, and I always like file-related stuff. That's probably because I'm a longtime SharePoint guy. And as we know, Teams uses SharePoint in the back end for files. So I was just going through the files there. I thought I might just talk through a few things there. One that I did want to mention is for those that use OneNote in Teams. Lately, you may have noticed, if I can find it here, this message here about OneNote being read-only by default. And that's recent. I think we've got some documentation on it. I think it's, in this current time, I think based on the additional usage, that's going around, that's to kind of throttle some things. What has changed recently, though, this edit notebook is you're basically one click away from editing this notebook, despite it being in read-only by default. And this edit notebook button is relatively new. There was like some hyperlink that maybe wasn't quite as maybe intuitive. So this nice button here is relatively new. So again, it's read only by default, but you're one click away from your normal usage of OneNote. So just think that was just one of the things I was just thinking about as I was looking through these files and saw the notebook there. So you may or may not have known that or noticed that. So it's not an error when you see that. It's a kind of a throttle setting that's happening right now. So I thought that might be useful. Other things related to files. The other thing that came up from a customer recently, or has come up a couple of times in the past, just in case you're not aware, for most of us, maybe, this isn't an issue. Word, Office files in general, like this is a Word doc, DOCX, spreadsheet, XLSX. For those of us that have been using Office for a while, I mean, you may know that, you may remember the days when it didn't have the X on it, right? So, and that was like 10 years ago, I think, or something like that. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because if it doesn't have the X and it's DOC, probably means that it was created with an older version of Office, which normally isn't that big a deal for your basic, Word or Excel doc. I mean, all the versions can read it just fine. It can be a big deal for using it here in Teams. And so, for instance, I had a customer that put a DOC file in in Teams here. And that's fine, it works. Well, it doesn't necessarily work because when you try to open it, and you would expect, as I click this one, you'd expect to see an edit button, you expect to work with it like normal. It didn't. It was DOC, it was an older version. I don't know what version of Office they were using, but in order for me to get edit capabilities, and Teams told me, exactly what I needed to do, but it was telling me basically to upgrade the format of the document. And at the end of the day, what happened in that environment was that then there was, let's say it was this contact list, there was two now two versions of that. It was the old one and the new one, the DLC and the DLCX. The DLCX is totally Teams friendly. Everybody's able to see and edit and all that stuff. And the DLC, Teams didn't delete it. It just made a new copy of it in a new format. And so, so Teams helped, work around the issue. It gave the messages and everything to let them know what they needed. But again, that's just something to keep in mind if you have users or are a user with an older version of Word or older version of Office wanting to use Office in Teams, or even if you're migrating Office documents maybe from a file share or some other location where those formats may be older, keep that in mind that you may need to upgrade their format in order for them to work as normal in Teams. The scenario I just described was pretty straightforward, and that Teams helped me with it. I have seen other folks kind of have problems with their Office files and not necessarily get a message, and then it turns out they just needed to upgrade it, and then all the quirks worked fine. So I don't know what the situation will look like for you, but the tip of the day is just, work with updated Office documents for the best experience. If you are an Office 365 user, depending on your SKU, you may own Office 365, Pro Plus, which would be the the most up-to-date version. And so I bring that up as well. Sometimes I'll have users that own Office 365 and own Pro Plus, but are still sitting on their older, what we would call like a perpetual license of an older version of Office. You own it. You own Pro Plus. It's the latest, greatest. It's got all the bells and whistles. If you own it, you might as well use it. It'll give you the best experience in something like Teams, among other things. So that was something that just came up this week from a files perspective. So I thought I'd mention that. And again, anytime, any question, even if it's unrelated to files, any question related to Teams or even Office 365, feel free to put it in the Q&A chat. But in terms of files, there was some other thing. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention is, because I don't know if I've shown this before in previous office hours, just making sure people know that, let's go here to general files. I guess that's fine. I can put it in a new folder. That you can drag and drop files into the Teams client. I think even if it's the browser as well. So here I've got a bunch of just files here just to kind of prove that, right? Files in Windows Explorer, stored locally, bring them over. You can see, well, I had a feeling that was going to happen. I made a bunch of empty documents, and that was my problem. I can fix that real quick. I'll delete these, and then I'll actually put some text in here. Close that out. And then, all right, so that should be fine. I think it's at 12K now instead of 0K. So again, highlighting them from Windows Explorer locally, dragging them over into Teams. And you can see it puts them right in there, right? From Windows Explorer to the Teams cloud. It could be as easy as that. So I don't necessarily have to use the upload button or upload one at a time. I can drag and drop lots of files. The other way that I can do that, again, is if I have synced this area, which I have. You can see here this Contoso. And what am I looking at here? I'm looking at the district. No, I'm looking at 2018 safety audit, the general channel. So 2018 safety audit, I've synced the whole library for that team. So here's the general channel, the folders for general channel. There's the new folder I was in. You can see same thing on Teams versus local. And again, given that it's local, go back to my little collection of documents, grab a few, Control C, go back, I think it was safety audit. Go back here, Control V. So, that's the kind of, copy paste we've been doing for decades, right? So that may be for some of your users may be more comfortable with that. and that's going to work as well. Hit refresh here just to show that, they come in as well. So, I think sometimes I've seen users feel like I'm in Office 365 now. Everything I do has got to be in the browser. I got to be, I got to forget or give up all of the things I used to do with Windows Explorer and, Windows Office desktop. And that's just, not the case, right? I mean, we can still do our traditional kind of Windows Explorer stuff and our desktop stuff, even though we're working with cloud storage locations. So thought that was worth mentioning. And then of course, these can also be moved around as well. Like obviously I could take these here. So I've synced two different teams here, as you can see. And, I can certainly cut and paste or copy and, move these around between these two teams. I could also do that in here, right? If I do a move, right, or a copy, and then just go browse for that other team. So I'm in the safety audit team, and then I can go browse for the District 9, right, and do a move. And so it's doing its thing. One file has been moved. If I come over here, I should see it just fine. Somewhere in there, yep, there we go. So, moving things around, it's a lot of flexibility there for that kind of thing. Question, I noticed some new features were released to the government cloud for Teams this week. Can you provide an overview of what features were included in this update? A couple new features I noticed are video backgrounds during calls and more than 4 video tiles on the screen at once during team meetings. That's right. So yeah, I would say there may have been others, but the 3 that I know I had been talking about lately that got released, I would say 4 actually. So you're right. We're now at 9x9 screen, or I'm sorry, 3x3, or a total of 9 screens during a Teams meeting as opposed to 4. And I don't have a quick way of showing that, live without, getting 9 of my demo users in a call. But yeah, when you're in a meeting now, it used to be a 2x2 screen. Now you're 3x3 or 9 total. So that did release to the government cloud. Also the background features, which I may be able to show that. I don't know in this demo environment if I can show that. But in a nutshell, in a nutshell, that is, I probably can't show it because this demo environment doesn't have a camera for video. Check real quick. No, yeah, but what would be here is as opposed to just having blur background like it did in the past, we now would have, I think it says show background effects, and you'll have a collection of backgrounds to choose from that you can place behind you. So same concept as blur background, it's just now a picture background. So yes, that got released as well. And then as you can also see here, the raise hand feature got released. So you can see I click that, it puts a hand up on on my name. So anybody in this meeting that raises their hand, the organizer, anybody really can see that. That lets them know somebody wants to talk. The other person, I can either lower my own hand, or the organizer or somebody can lower my hand as well, because they know I've now been addressed. So that feature is there as well. So those are the 3 big ones. And the 4th one I would say, and it's still rolling out maybe, is shifts coming to GCC as well. Shifts being the application for allowing you to, as the name implies, create like open shifts or put team members on shifts. Let's say in the classic case of a retail store, right? Who's coming in on Monday morning versus Monday afternoon. In the state and local government space, I know many agencies are looking at it for return to work scenarios, but that is part of GCC as well. So that's in Teams, and for your frontline workers, they may end up using the mobile app a lot for the shifts capability, but it certainly is in the desktop and browser app experience as well. So yeah, those are what I would say the 4 biggest and newest additions that have, you know, released lately. I mean, there may be some other small ones that I'm not thinking about, but yes, those are definitely out there. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there was a quick way to show the 9 screens. I don't think so. Not at least not in a demo environment. So yeah, great question. Any other questions that are out there? Just trying to think through more files related stuff here. Not that I can think of. I think that the new Microsoft Edge. I don't know if you've been noticing this. If you're not on Edge and you've been noticing this icon, I mean, this is the new Chromium-based Edge, and that is coming out, or I think it's part of the upcoming Windows update to kind of actually replace the previous Edge with the new Edge. My 2 cents on that is this is an absolutely wonderful browser. Everyone should use it, all that good stuff. I mean, that's just even me just personally. I just like it, and especially for what I do, which is a lot of profile or demo related stuff. I mean, you can see here, I don't know, you can barely see it, but I mean, I've got different browser profiles here that Edge is able to help me keep track of. And so these are all their own self-contained, you know, cookies and profile syncs and everything that are in there. And that's a feature that was on Chrome as well. They just do a really nice job of that. I think there's some new features related to that coming out. And of course, if you sign in with those profiles, you can sync information across browsers. So, but it is also, from a Teams perspective, that's also worth mentioning, just because Edge and I think maybe Chrome are like the 2 main browsers that will give you like the most experiences in the browser. Like, for instance, desktop sharing. I mean, if you try to use an older browser or some other browsers, you may not get something like desktop sharing in your browser experience, but you will with the Chrome-based ones. So something to keep in mind. I think you know, you're going to get it here soon anyway, you know, but it's also available. You know, if you just search for download Edge, you can download it and install it at any time, or you can just wait for the updates. But I highly recommend it. Great browser. Also lets you install things as apps. So you know, for instance, here this is, you know, I'm in the browser for this profile. Obviously I can use it here, but if you see, I come here and I can go to apps and install this site as an app, and, you know, name it whatever I want, but I hit install. You'll see that it now is like its own little app. I mean, it's still using the browser. In fact, I can still open it up in the browser, but it looks and feels like an app. In fact, it's now something I can even you know, see in my start menu and even pin it to start. And so I could click on it as an app, and I'm literally clicking on essentially a browser, you know, of Teams. So that's a pretty cool feature as well, I think. I'll just hit that. Yep. Cool. Cool. Well, there are no other questions. Happy to give you 10 minutes of your day back. If there are questions, though, again, you can put them in the Q&A chat. I think I talked about everything I think I was going to talk about with files. Trying to think if there's anything else. Nothing that I can think of. All right. Well, yeah, I'm happy to give you 10 minutes of your day back. I'll hang out for a couple minutes, see if anybody puts any other last minute questions in. But other than that, again, this is just 30 minutes every week, open office hours, talk about any and all things Teams and Office 365. So yeah, if there are no other questions, then I'll see you next week, 10 a.m. Friday. And as always, after this session, the URL you use to get here will convert to a landing page that'll give you a nice convenient link to all of the previous recordings that I've done for each week. So that's a playlist that's starting to get pretty large now. It's been doing this a couple months now. Someone did ask, where do you find shifts? Shifts are going to be in the three dots. I happen to pin mine here, but it'll essentially be in the three dots area here, and you kind of click it and see it there. What you may, your tenant administrators will have to unblock it before you can see it. So depending on, who's asking this question, if you're not a tenant administrator, maybe you're in an agency or a department and whatnot, if you don't see it, it could be that at the tenant level, they haven't enabled it yet, but it is in GCC. So it does exist. Once it is enabled, then this is where you would see it. And your tenant admins can also, pin it to the left rail as well. So again, if you don't see it, probably not enabled, but it does exist in GCC and all clouds at this point right now. There is some, if you are interested in shifts, there's, obviously the typical, what is shifts kind of documentation that's out there, with nice little videos and everything. But again, in a nutshell, I don't know about a nutshell. Maybe that it is relatively straightforward, I think, but certainly there's a lot of settings and things in here that are worth reading the documentation on. If there's interest, maybe I could certainly do make a future office hours session like this dedicated to shifts, if that's of interest. But yeah, but this just went on a list of brand new things to the government cloud. If you're on the line today from the commercial cloud, you've had shifts for quite some time, so this isn't a new thing. All right, thanks for that question. I think we got another one. Okay, yep, let's see that. Thank you. All right. All right, so with that, I guess, for those of you in the government cloud, enjoy your 9 screens and your hand raising, and enjoy your background effects. For those in the commercial, yeah, I'm assuming you've been enjoying those things. Yeah, just let's have a great Friday, and I'll see you again next week, 10 a.m. Thanks.